Tina, it's lovely to meet you.
It's nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
What does it feel like to be able to perform live in front of audiences again?
I get to do my job, something that I feel I have the right to do. I'm incredibly excited, not only for myself, I'm excited for the collective, I'm excited for an industry that's been on pause for over a year now, and that's really struggled, like everything, but artists were the first to stop and are certainly the last to be reinstated. The arts. So I just want to do my job.
A lot of performing artists, I think, felt hurt during the COVID period, that they felt like it was rammed home to them, that they're taken for granted a bit by society. Given that we all relied so much on the arts to get us through that lockdown period, why do we take it for granted like that?
That's interesting. It's very interesting. I think the arts is something that intellectual property and content is majorly undervalued, because there seems to be a narrative that has been sold very successfully by the media that consists of an artist or artists being well off, very secure, and leading this unbelievably glamorous life, all to which is incorrect. So that narrative, the reality of that narrative is just doesn't make any sense. So artists started giving away content for free, including myself too, doing 6 or 7 weeks of doing Quarantino. And the reason why I did that was because I was incredibly bored and I felt that it was important to stay connected with people, But during that breakdown, an economic system was not set up for the artists, so therefore everybody was struggling. And when you are sold a dream or a philosophy by the industry that says that every bit of publicity is good publicity, and that unless you invest yourself at whatever cost, people won't listen, or you've got to do this in order to stay current, and So then the artist, who is inherently a fragile and a vulnerable creature, buys into that narrative and goes, oh my God, I've got to stay current, I've got to be relevant, therefore I must do this, I must do that, I must do this. And at the end of the day, we are people too, and there's a life, and life costs. So who pays your bills? We were fortunate enough, I guess, that the government weighed in to some artists, but because, once again, there is a lot of work to be done in order for artists to understand that they too are a business entity and they do have to have some sort of business sense. We can't live off the smell of a fantasy that's sold to us. So I think that last year was perhaps an opportune moment for artists to maybe really take a good look and go, okay, well, where do I fit in the grand scheme of this picture, and how do I maintain a life? Because we need to live. We can't be seduced by a fantasy anymore.
You mentioned feeling that need to connect with people. Is there any substitute for the connection that a performer has with a live audience?
No, and that's the big part of the reason why Quarantino only lasted 6 or 7 weeks. I think by about the 3rd or 4th week, which I loved because I was really fortunate enough to connect with people that I really liked and that I chose to want to speak to, a screen will never, ever replace the beautiful alchemy that happens between human beings. It can never do that, and it will never do that. No algorithms, doesn't matter how intelligent they all think they are, they can knock themselves out. It will never replace that human chemistry, ever.
How have you been thinking about this tour at this time and what you want to try to bring into that performance?
I think for me, it's just about connecting with people. I just want to be able to stand on that stage. I'm able to do my job because I instinctively and electrically work off that energy of those people in front of me. So I'm just really have a very profound desire to want to tell stories, because we need to tell those stories. Art has been on a very long pause. And during that time, I think that art has probably accrued some amazing experiences. It's time to transform that.
What do you think about when you're performing? Are you thinking about the technical side of it, or are you thinking about the audience? Are you thinking about the words of the song? What's running through your mind?
How about all of the above? All of the above, terrified about lyrics, because obviously, the remembering of lyrics is something, it's a muscle. You got to train that muscle, So you're worried about whether you're going to mess a lyric up. You're worried about whether people are enjoying the moment. You worry about a lot of things. But I think the most important thing about this next time going out is that I'm comfortable and peaceful in my place, and that the imperfections are what it is. And I embrace all of that. Nothing is ever perfect, and it's not what I'm searching for.
It's Young Talent Time! And Miss Tina Arena as they trip through Saturday.
You hold a unique place of affection, I think, in Australians' hearts, because they've known you for a really long time. In your ARIA Hall of Fame speech in 2015, you said that Young Talent Time was really important in teaching you your craft. What important things did it teach you?
Gave me values. It made me understand and respect that my craft, our craft, or the arts is not something that is individualistic. It's a collective. I'm not able to do my job without a wonderful team of people who support you through the good, bad and the indifferent. And it is that collective that actually enabled the show to go on. So Young Talent Time was an exquisite experience that could certainly never be repeated today, because we don't live in the same society. We're not set up, we're not configured the same way. So it really was a core, roots, a real traditional education of listening, watching, talking, doing in a very organic and traditional way. And those values were something that were instilled in me as a little girl, and it's invaluable. I can't estimate any of that.
You better shape up, 'cause I need a friend.
What do you think if you ever see clips of yourself as a little girl singing?
You better understand.
I get really emotional now. I think maybe because I have a real respect for that little girl. Probably more so now as a parent, and sort of realising, being the mother of a 15-year-old young man who's growing up in a very, very different world, who I haven't seen, hanging out of a tree or running through the fields for a long time, because his entire generation spends their time on a phone. And that breaks my heart. That breaks my heart. And I have told him recently, I've said, as busy as my childhood was, I had an exquisite childhood. I was on a bike, we were in a court, and we had lots of neighbours and lots of kids that came from different cultures. There were Maltese, there were Greeks, there were English, there were Croatians, there were Italians, and we all lived so beautifully together. And we used to hang out and go and eat at each other's houses and have afternoon tea, and it was exquisite. And I keep saying to Gabriel, I wish that I could give you just a chapter of my childhood so you could actually see how beautiful it actually was.
Because an outsider looking at your childhood might say, oh, well, she had to work so hard. She had a full-time job at Young Talent Time as well as doing her school. But it sounds like it was really quite magical.
It was my choice, Leigh. I wasn't obliged to do it. My parents never obliged me. They said to me, what is it that you want to do? And I said, this is what I love. This is my purpose. And I was incredibly fortunate as a little girl to have that purpose. Purpose is something that people lack today because there are so many variations, so many different layers, so many different things. And again, they're seduced by a fantasy, not understanding what is truly involved underneath all of that.
When did you realise that singing was your purpose?
Oh, I was pretty young. I think I would have to say that I was probably under 5 when that became really apparent to me.
That's an incredibly fortunate thing, isn't it, to have that so young?
Absolutely. That's what I mean. It is about purpose, and everybody needs a purpose. Everybody.
And also fortunate that you felt it was your purpose and you were also a brilliant singer. Imagine if you felt that that was your calling in life, but you were sort of a mediocre singer.
Yeah, well, it's a reality, you know. But there were other things that I wanted to be too, you know. I had desires of being able to go on and continue tertiary education, and I never took that time to, you know. My sister went to university, and my friends all went to university, and a part of me felt like I was a bit of a failure in that department because I'd never gone on to fulfil those studies because I was so categorically aware at an early age of what I wanted to do. So that took me a while to get over that. You know, I mean, I've got my friends that, you know, they've done pretty well, you know. But that was their calling and the arts was my calling. So as time has gone, I'm comfortable in that.
It's a very universal experience to feel that you're a failure in some aspects of your life. How have you learned to accommodate that and accept those feelings and not allow them to derail you?
Well, you know, I've obviously been derailed emotionally. You know, I grew up in an era where it wasn't terribly cool to be ethnic. I was also in an industry surrounded by an incredible amount of misogyny and really poor behaviour, to which I'm very, very aware of now as a mature woman. I don't know. How do I just get on? You know, I think it's my education. It's my family education. You know, you get to a certain point where you realise there are going to be stumbling blocks, but it's how you manage those stumbling blocks.
When I was preparing for this interview, I was listening to your 1994 album Don't Ask, which was just a phenomenally massive hit at the time. It's really striking listening to your voice how much warmth and connection there is in it and the sort of almost immediate, like visceral physical reaction you have as a listener to it. Is that something you had to learn or has that always been just there?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably always been there. You know, I've always been a storyteller and I've always felt something emotionally when I'm doing what it is that I do. I have a very profound connection with it that is inexplicable in a way because it is magic and you can't explain everything, and I'm okay with that.
What sort of arts do you consume that give you that feeling as an audience member, that sort of alchemy when you're at the other end of it?
Oh, I mean, I love art, full stop. You know, it can be a painting, it can be a landscape, it can be a book, it can be a film, it can be a wonderful conversation. And there's been some pretty magical conversations that have taken place in my life, you know. Music is therapy for me, actually. Much of what is written and co-written are the fruits, the results of some wonderful philosophical conversations, you know.
Working through things from your own life through music.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked through a lot of emotional difficulties through my music. I think that has been my therapy with a capital T. And I just feel extremely privileged that I've had this outlet and capacity to be able to just transform everything that I'm feeling internally and to put it out in a song and a melody and telling a story that hopefully most can identify with, have some sort of a connection with.
Speaking of people having a connection with things, I was reading that young people are obsessed with Sorrento Moon and that they love singing it at festivals and that it's just become a sort of real thing among younger music fans.
It's interesting, isn't it? Well, those younger music fans that you're perhaps referring to are the children of those parents who grew up with me and where Don't Ask became a sort of soundtrack of their lives. And I find it so exquisitely beautiful that they have been able to transcend that record, and those stories and melodies have been passed down in generations. It's an extraordinary privilege for me. It's really humbling in the true sense of the term for me. It makes me quite emotional. I go, how did that happen? But I guess it happened because Sorrento Moon came from a very, very honest place. I remember being 15, my son's age. I remember sitting on the back beach of Sorrento and watching all these kids, these guys and these girls surf and their interactions. And I remember feeling like such an outcast because I wanted so much to be a part of that and realised that I never could be and that I never would be. So I chose to write about it.
Maybe that's because, again, that's a very universal feeling. It clearly comes through the music and it hits that universal thing in all of us.
Yeah, it does. But it really was. It was a moment of that kind of observation. I remember how it all came true. It was oh so tender, and I was lost with you by the sweet Sorrento Moon. I spent my time looking at surfies. It's okay. I'm totally fine with that.
I still do it all the time.
I still look at surfies. Nothing wrong with that.
In November last year, you said in an interview that you'd had a period in 2019 where you'd thought about quitting and having some time out. Where are you now on that?
Well, I think I've had enough time out now. I've had enough time to zoom out, to analyse, to understand where it is that I'm going, or maybe not, and being in the present. The past is the past. The future doesn't exist. But all I do have, all we have, is our present, and learning to be present and learning to enjoy that moment and getting back to very, very basic things. And when I say basic, I mean basic. My life is pretty simple, actually, and it's purposely done like that. It's a choice.
Tina, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I sang your praises daily, and we let ourselves get swept away. But it's true, baby, we held heaven in our hands for days. You wait a long time for something wild to take you somewhere. All I needed was to fly. It's been a long way from paradise to ordinary. Picture us just smiling there. We didn't have a care, and I remember how it all came true. It was all so I was lost with you by the sweet Sorrento moon. But the stars don't burn that brightly. Every season surely slips away. But it's true, baby, you're the reason why I chose to stay. Hey, you wait a long time to find your dream and hold on to it. And all I needed was to fly. It's been a long way from innocence to understanding. Picture of a child at play is how I feel today. And I remember how it all came true. It was all so tender, and I was lost with you by the sweet Sorrento moon. Sweet Sorrento moon. Sorrento moon.
Hi, I'm Leigh Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.